What is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to the Russian Revolution Part 2. First part of this, we kind of talked about the causes of the revolution, what led up to it, Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks coming into power, and kind of some of those changes that Vladimir Lenin implemented or put into place. In this one, we're going to talk about what happened after Vladimir Lenin's death, and where we kind of left off in the story was that there's this dilemma among the Communist Party members or the Bolshevik Party. Remember, the Bolshevik Party is the party that's going to take over and lead this revolution, and they're going to call themselves the Communist Party, named after Vladimir or Karl Marx's ways. And under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, Lenin dies, and they're unsure who should be the next to lead Russia. And we have this dilemma between the Trotsky fans, he was the leader of the Red Army. He was kind of Lenin's boy. And on the other side, we have this guy, Joseph Stalin, who's the secretary of the Communist Party, who most people kind of don't trust, including Lenin, who really didn't want Stalin to become the next leader of the Soviet Union or Russia. So here's what we get into. Stalin is going to be the one to emerge as the leader. Stalin is going to become and the term that we're going to use for this, and this is going to be a term that we see throughout the rest of Global 2 and the rest of this course, is he becomes what is called a totalitarian. Totalitarian. Clap with me. Totalitarian. And what it means to be a totalitarian is you have total control over every part of a citizen's life. Very, very similar to an absolute monarch, what we talked about at the start of this course and earlier, except instead of being an absolute monarch, what makes him not an absolute monarch is that he is not a king. He doesn't pass on power to his son or daughter after he's dead. So he is a totalitarian, and he controls all aspects of children's life or of citizens' lives. So everything that goes on in the Soviet Union, he and whoever his advisors are control all aspects of it. And I just want to give you some examples of what this means. And we're going to see this, by the way, as we move forward in this course, as I said, with Hitler, with people like Mussolini, with other leaders in the 20th and 21st century who are this totalitarianism. So, couple kind of characteristics that we're going to see. One, we see what is called propaganda. Propaganda is the concept that you put out, and we've talked about it in class, that you put out information. It could be true, it could be false, but you're trying to convince people of your message. And this is a good example of propaganda right here. This is Stalin. He is driving the ship. CCCP are the initials in Russian of the Soviet Union. We call it the USSR in English, CCCP. So he is driving the ship, and in a sense, he is steering the country of Russia. He looks powerful. He looks strong. He looks like a ship captain. And that's him. This is the flag of the Soviet Union in the background. Also, we see what is called censorship. Censorship is when you limit access of the public or of people of your country information, where you kind of change information or you limit that information. And he is going to censor people, censor images, censor things. So this is one kind of example of something that he does. If you are his enemy, he might delete you from pictures and delete you from history. So this is the original photograph here of some of the Communist Party or Bolshevik leadership. This guy eventually went against Stalin. Look what happened to him in the future picture. They make him disappear, kind of like the original Photoshop before computers even existed. So one is propaganda and censorship. These are, again, the characteristics of totalitarianism. Two, we have a police state. Anyone who is seen as a threat to Stalin is arrested. If you are a threat to Stalin's power, they are going to arrest you and maybe give you false charges that don't really exist, but something that maybe they can try you with. And really, there's no democratic institution here. There's no trial by jury. There's no openness of the public to watch these court cases or to make sure that the legal system is being just. So anyone who is a threat to Stalin is arrested. Similar, again, a little similarity to what we saw under the Reign of Terror and Robespierre. Anyone who is a threat is put on trial. And basically, this is called the Great Purge. All of these people who are Bolsheviks, who helped lead this revolution, who tried to form this communist government, who may have helped Stalin get into power, are put on trial because Stalin sees these people as his most immediate threat. So these are Stalin's friends. These are people who Stalin worked with for 20 years. He puts them on trial. And basically what he says is, here's the deal. I'm going to put you on trial, and I'm going to basically give you a made-up charge. You can either agree that these charges you're guilty of, or I'm going to make your life miserable and I'm going to arrest your whole family. And a lot of these people admit to these crimes that are totally made up because they're worried about their family. And these people are going to be tried, convicted, sentenced to jail, and it's called a purge. And when you purge something, you get rid of it. So this is the Great Purge in the Soviet Union. Also in education, students are taught to obey Stalin. That's the main focus of education. They're also going to focus on science and math, but like really when it gets down to it, the propaganda piece is you're taught to obey Stalin in schools. You don't question the authority. And lastly is religious persecution. Stalin basically, in the Soviet Union, religion is essentially going to be banned and kind of presented as backwards. That the people who focus on religion are the uneducated people. And instead, in Stalin's mind, if you get rid of God, the highest power in the Soviet Union becomes Stalin. And if you think about that for a second, people who are religious, if you get rid of religion and they become not religious anymore, they won't pray to a higher power. That higher power will become Stalin. So Stalin in the Soviet Union really kind of attempts to get rid of religion as much as possible, which is very tough to do because you have devoutly religious people. Religion is ingrained, the Eastern Orthodox Church is ingrained into Russian culture, especially among Russian peasants. So that's the characteristics of totalitarianism. The other thing that Stalin is going to control besides the daily life of people is the economy. This economy, which is part of totalitarianism, is called a command economy. To command something is to control it. And for example, like a basketball player might command the court. If you command attention from someone, people are focused on you. And this is a command economy. All decisions are made by the government. The government, and under Stalin, is going to decide what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to produce. They decide everything. We are getting rid of free market economy. This is the opposite of free market. This is a command economy. A free market, or laissez-faire, hands off, is when you can decide what to buy, how much to buy, and what things should cost. This is where the government's making all the decisions. And here's the problem in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union, or Russia, is not industrialized. They've tried to industrialize. They failed to industrialize. They are behind the rest of Europe. Europe industrialized, Western Europe, back in the 17 and 1800s. This is 1920s, and Russia is still not industrialized. So the goal of this command economy under Stalin is to industrialize. And there's two things that he does. One is called the 5-year plan, because guess how long the plan is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Basically, he is going to attempt to improve and to industrialize heavy industry. Heavy industry are things like steel, iron, electricity, oil. It's not about textiles. It's not about making shirts or making things that consumers buy. This is about heavy industry. This is about building big things, whether it's for war, whether it's railroads, whether it's huge factories. And what he essentially does is he sets quotas. And if you don't know the term quotas, it is goals. And you set these quotas and you say, for example, hey, electricity industry, you need to produce, in 1927, you produced 500 million kilowatts of electricity. We're going to set a target for you in the next 5 years to produce 8 billion kilowatts of electricity. So we're going to increase it from 5 to 80. It's impossible to do that. We set these amazingly high goals and quotas, and it's almost impossible. But if you don't meet your goals, which you're not going to, we're going to arrest people in your factory. We're going to put them on trial for not producing and working fast enough. So it's going to be this extra motivation for people to work just a little bit harder in order to keep up and produce. The example that I would give you practical is, let's say you're an 85 student. That's your GPA. And there's a quota set for you to get a 99 GPA next year. And if you don't get a 99, you're going to be arrested. Most likely it's going to be almost impossible for you to get that 99. But if the threat is arrest, you are going to improve. And what happens under the 5-year plan is people are so scared of getting arrested, they never meet their ultimate goals because they're so insanely high, but they do improve. And you can see here from 1927 to 1937, obviously that's 10 years because there were 2 5-year plans. We do increase tremendously. I mean, this is an insane production or increase in production. Also, in order to farm, all farmers are put into one farm. Remember, Lenin gave peasants their own farmland, which was a huge deal. Stalin takes that farmland back and he says, you don't own your farm anymore. You're going to work your farms together. So instead of each individual owning their own farm, we're going to work on a farm collectively and we're going to work together. This is totally unsuccessful. Peasants don't like each other. They don't want to work together. My neighbor doesn't work as hard as me. I'm working hard. He doesn't. I'm not going to work as hard anymore. All kinds of problems, kind of like group work in class, where someone's always slacking. This is our map of Russia, and these are some of the Russian, these are going to be some of the areas under Russian control. I do want to point out this one area right here called the Ukraine. This is, they are not Russian, they're Ukrainian nationality-wise. They don't like that they are under the control of the Soviet Union. They would rather be their own country. And there's this movement in the 1930s for these Ukrainian people to rise up and split away from the Soviet Union. And Stalin is having none of it. Remember, Stalin is a totalitarian. So he is going to crush this rebellion. He's going to crush this nationalist movement. And what he does is he's going to basically lead what many consider today to be a genocide. Although it hasn't been officially termed that, a lot of countries do think this is a genocide. And it's called the Holodomor. And what that translates to is death by hunger. And in the Ukraine, Stalin essentially takes food from the Ukrainian people and then isolates the Ukraine so no food can enter into the Ukraine. And the Ukraine produces a ton of food, but Stalin's people are going to come in during harvest time and take this food. It is going to lead to the death of possibly 8 million to 10 million people in the Ukraine. Estimates widely differ. It's hard to know because a lot of times in these situations, this is not kept track of by the government, but it's estimated that Stalin is going to lead directly to the death of these people. Now, some people are going to try and hide their food. Some people are going to try and store their food in areas that they don't. But generally, the Soviet Union are going to send in soldiers and spies who are going to go in and make sure it's taken. These are the pictures from this time period in the Ukraine where people are starving. You can see mainly these are children, but also these are bodies. This looks similar to what you were going to see in the Holocaust. It looks like a genocide because many people think it is a genocide where you're intentionally trying to kill a specific group of people. So again, this is Russia. This is the Ukraine. If you pay attention to the news, this generally comes up a lot more today as well because there are still issues between the Ukraine and Russia today in the mid 2010s. So with that said, that's what I got on Stalin. Stalin is going to be the leader of the Soviet Union in World War II. He is going to be on the side of the United States, although he is originally on the side of Hitler. But we'll get into all that later. But he is going to be alive until the early 1950s. By the way, quick story on Stalin's death. When Stalin dies, people are so scared of him and intimidated by him. He dies in his sleep in his bedroom in 1952. No one, and he doesn't wake up the next morning because he's dead in his bedroom. No one wanted to get him because they were scared that if they woke him up, that Stalin would have them arrested. In the grand scheme of things, Stalin, it was like 2 days he was in his bedroom dead. And finally someone was like, we probably should go in there and make sure he's okay. And he was dead. But that's my story on Stalin. Totalitarian, total control. That's the theme. Any questions, as always, write it down. Ask in class. Catch you later.